Hi everyone, this is Anna and welcome to another sewing tutorial. Today I want to show you how to make this button-up dress. Visit my website annathetailer.com for a ready-to-sew patterns in 9 different sizes. For this project I will need 2.5 meters of chiffon fabric, and as lining I will use poplin fabric. Let's start stitching. Take the front bodice details, mark dart end on a lining on both sides, then place lining on the front bodice details, pin all the way and stitch. Join notches on the side seam to create dart. Pin on both details and stitch the dart. Place tailor's hem underneath the dart and press. Mark notches end on the back bodice detail and place lining on top. Pin all the way and stitch. Join notches on the bottom of the bodice to create dart. Pin on both sides and stitch the darts. Turn darts towards center and press. Place front details on top of the back with face side inside. Pin side and shoulder seams and then stitch. And overlock seams straight away. Press all seams towards back. Take the elastic loops and place them to the right hand side of the front bodice closure. Pin all the way and secure it with stitch. I prefer my loops to be less frequent, so I will just fold each second loop and stitch it inside. Place front closure interfacing on the bodice, pin it to the bodice closure and stitch. Overlock both sides of the interfacing. Turn seam allowance towards facing and make an edge stitch to secure seams in place. Turn facing inside and press it flat. Place lining on the collar details, pin all the way and stitch. Place one collar detail on a neckline, pin matching notches. Leave 1 cm sticking out from collar and stitch it in. Cut one elastic loop, pin it to the right hand side of the collar and stitch. On the other collar detail, press 1 cm up. Place another collar detail to the first one, pin all the way and stitch. Trim half of the seam allowance from the collar. Turn out collar and press it flat. Fold bottom seam inside, pin along the neckline and stitch by 1 mm on the collar from the face side. Press the sleeve vent binding, folding quarter of the seam. Then press same amount on the other side and press binding in half. Transfer sleeve vent placement from pattern and cut it through. Make small notches to opposite directions. Make a fold over the vent to open it and pin to hold it in place. Cover vent seam with binding, pin it all the way and stitch. Cut off binding excess and release the pin. From the wrong side of the sleeve, join vent ends. Secure with pin. Draw a 45-degree line and stitch binding to prevent it from rolling out. And press it flat, covering one side of the binding with another one. Fold sleeve seam, pin it and stitch both sleeves. And overlock sleeve seams with front side up. Turn seam towards back and press it. On a sleeve bottom, make 2 big stitches 1/2 centimeter apart. I only make back stitch on one side of the sleeve. Take 2 bottom threads and pull them to create gathering and distribute gathering evenly. Place lining on each cuff detail, pin all around and stitch. Place cuff detail on top of the other with face side inside. Pin one longer side and stitch. Place sleeve on a cuff, stepping back 1 centimeter from the seam. Pin sleeve all the way and stitch. Fold middle cuff seam down and make an edge stitch to secure it. Fold and press 1 centimeter up on the bottom cuff detail. Fold cuff middle seam up and press it. Place elastic loops on a cuff following the bigger part of the sleeve. Pin it and stitch. And again, I don't want buttons too frequent, so I'm folding each second loop inside. Fold cuff side up, leave lining seam unfolded, pin on both sides and both sleeves, and then stitch. Turn cuff inside out. Fold lining seam allowance inside. Pin seam all the way and make a stitch by 1 mm from edge, stitching from the face side. Press cuffs flat. Join sleeve seam with bodice side seam. Pin matching sleeve head notch and shoulder seam and stitch the sleeves in. Overlock armholes with bodice side up. Take the skirt lining, double turn hem and stitch front skirt details as well as the back skirt lining. And then press the skirt lining hem. Place skirt back lining on top of the back skirt with both details facing down. Pin it all the way, do the same with front skirt and stitch the lining in. Join one pair of the lining with chiffon pockets, pin all around and stitch. On the other pair of pockets lining, mark pocket opening using erasable pen or chalk. Mark 1 cm from the edge and draw a straight line. Place those pockets lining on the front skirt side seams. Pin and stitch along those lines. Draw 45-degree angles and carefully cut it through, but not too close to the stitch. Turn pockets lining and make an edge stitch on the lining to secure seam allowance. Place another pocket lining on top, pin all around and stitch. And then overlock pockets. Place back skirt on top of the front skirt with face side inside. Join side seams and stitch. Overlock side seams with front side up. Press side seams towards back. On the right hand side of the skirt, mark 22 cm from the bottom. Starting from that mark, pin elastic loops till the waist of the skirt and stitch the loops. And again, I'm folding each second loop to make them less frequent. Place skirt closure facing to each side of the skirt, pin all the way and stitch. Overlock both sides of the facing. Turn seam towards facing and secure it with an edge stitch. Fold facing inside and press it on both sides. Join bodice with skirt, matching center notches and side seams. Pin all along the waist and stitch. Overlock waist seam with bodice side up. Join facing with waist seam, pin it and secure it with a small back stitch. Turn waist seam down and press it. Overlock skirt hem all the way. Turn skirt facing around the hem with the wrong side out. Pin and stitch on both sides of the skirt. Turn out those corners and fold 1 cm up, then stitch all the way the skirt hem. And then press the hem. Take the belt details, join seam and stitch. Press seam open. Fold belt with face side inside. Pin along the length and stitch it all the way, but leave a small opening to turn it out later. Trim corners on both sides of the belt and turn it out through the hole. Make sure to turn those corners well. And then press the belt. Hand stitch opening. Take needle and thread folded in 4 and secure it on the side seam. Create a loop and pull a thread through that loop. Repeat the same around 90 times. After that, pull thread together with needle to make a final stitch and secure again on the side seam. Pull belt through those loops. I made a fabric covered buttons, but you can use any buttons that you prefer. On a cuff, mark 1 cm from the edge, match cuff edges and mark button placements following the loops. And hand stitch the buttons. Mark 2 cm from the edge on a dress closure, match waist seam with another side and mark buttons placement following the loop. And hand stitch the buttons. Get rid of all of the marking lines and give a good press to the dress. And here is the final result. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you were inspired to make this dress, visit my website annadetailor.com for a PDF sewing pattern. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial and learned something new. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to see more projects. And I will see you in my next one.